Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Can You Hear Me? Can You Hear Me is an online event by Beyond the Box on the topic of mental health awareness and sensitization in children, with a focus on how literature and stories can play a crucial role in initiating these important conversations. Now, a lot of people ask me that why an event on mental health and emotional awareness on a platform like Beyond the Box, which is primarily about creative writing and literature. Well, to be very honest, I strongly feel that writing is so close to our emotions, right? I mean, I think a very important quality of a writer is to actually look inwards and be connected to one's own emotions. So I feel that it actually goes completely in sync with what we stand for. Also, at Beyond the Box, we believe in the holistic development of children, and I believe that conversations about their own mental health are extremely important. And definitely, stories play such an important role in having such conversations with them. Because a lot of time, parents tell me that we cannot just go and tell our kids that, okay, come today, let's talk about mental health. Of course, it doesn't work that way with kids most of the times. So, reading books on these kind of topics, I think, helps a lot. This is something that I have experienced not just as a creative writing mentor, but also as a parent with my 6-year-old daughter. Coming up is a panel discussion that I particularly have been really looking forward to because the panelists are all women I have loved, I have looked up to, and I'm sure this is going to be a lot of, there are going to be a lot of takeaways from this as well. The title of this panel discussion I'll be revealing very soon. Before I do that, I just want to remind the audience that there is a surprise gift for the most engaged audience member today. So yes, please do, keep sharing, please do commenting, reacting, and you can also spread the word in your family and friends if you want them to watch the event. Okay, so now it's time to have an insightful and important panel discussion on the topic how mental health awareness and conversations can empower children. So let me first get my moderator for the discussion on stream. So Anjali, I hope you're online. Yes, so our beautiful moderator is here. Hi Anjali, welcome to Beyond the Box.
Hi Anupama. Thank you so much. It's so lovely and a true privilege to be here at our first BTB event. I'm hoping more would be there, but I'm really excited and looking forward to a meaningful conversation.
Yes, absolutely. So let me introduce Anjali for the audience. Anjali G. Sharma is a writer, published author, and a development sector enthusiast. She leads education initiatives at Charter for Compassion India. She helps nonprofits in the education space across various domains of communication, strategy, curriculum, networking, facilitation, and operations. She contributes regularly for various online and print publications, writing on social and topical issues. Now coming to our speakers for this panel discussion. So let me get my first speaker on stream, Dr. Debmita Datta.
Hi Anupama. Hi Anjali.
Hi Debmita.
Such a pleasure to see you.
Thank you so much for having me. My great pleasure and privilege to be here.
It's totally my honor. So for the audience, Dr. Debmita Datta, MBBS, MD, is a practicing doctor, a parenting consultant, and the founder of What Parents Ask. She conducts workshops on parenting for schools and corporate organizations. She's a well-known thought leader in parenting. Her books on parenting are published by Juggernaut Books, and she's frequently quoted in national and international publications of repute. And let me tell you all that till date, I think she's one of the most, wonderful parenting experts and consultant that I've come across. Her suggestions are always very practical and something which you will truly relate to, and you will feel that yes, if I follow this, I know that things will be fine. So her suggestions are that assuring. So thank you once again, Debmita, for being on the panel.
Thank you, Anupama. What a beautiful introduction. I'm absolutely floored, and thank you so much. I have no other words.
Okay, lovely. And yes, now coming to my second panelist, somebody who I truly wonder how many hours she has in a day, Riddhi Doshi. Thank you so much, Riddhi, for agreeing to be a part of this panel discussion.
Thank you so much, Anupama. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Yeah, so I would like to introduce Riddhi, but trust me, if I have to actually introduce everything about her, I think I can go on for hours. So, Riddhi Doshi is a child psychologist, she's a parenting counselor, she's a dance movement therapy practitioner, a mental health practitioner, a TEDx speaker, and advisory to TEDx clubs. She is the founder of Parent Tales, a platform created to handhold parents in the journey of parenting. And she's the founder of Laja, India's first forum for women, and founder of Yodha Talks. So she wears many hats and she's a wonderful woman. So yes, once again, welcome to Beyond the Box, Riddhi.
Thank you. It's an honor. It's a pleasure. And, I'm just so looking forward to today's panel discussion.
Yes, we too. And finally, we have Anupriya Gupta with us, and she is a wonderful writer. Of course, she's been a great friend to me, so I feel so happy to see all these wonderful women here. So thank you, Anupriya, for taking our time to be a part of this panel discussion.
Hello, Anupama, and hello, everybody out there. And I feel so nervous today and so elated because I have all specialists around me. So I am going to be the beneficiary of today's panel discussion.
That's so beautifully put, Anupriya. So for the audience, Anupriya Gupta is a mom, parenting blogger, author, content curator, career counselor, and coach and mentor. She has been featured among the top mom bloggers of India on multiple platforms and feels strongly about the cause of mental health. Her pragmatic and responsible thought process shines through in her body of work. So we have a fabulous panel here with us today, and I'm sure, like I said, there'll be a lot of learning. So audience, keep watching, keep commenting, and also you can share your questions. I'll be keeping a stock of these questions, and at the end of the discussion, we can take up some of these questions as time permits. So over to you, Anjali. I'll take your leave.
Thank you so much, Anupama. And it is my pleasure to be with a esteemed panel of all of you wonderful women. Your work I truly follow and admire and have huge regard for. And Anupriya, you said you're feeling nervous. I'm nervous here, being in the company of all of you experts. So without further ado, for all those who've joined us today, thank you so much. I would like to start with a question which is directed to all three of you, and which is very important since we're talking about mental health awareness and the conversations. I want you to share some insights about what is the need for such conversations to happen and why are we missing the focus on them. Devmita, Riddhi, Anupriya, any of you can start. Yeah, Devmita, go ahead.
So yes, we definitely need to talk about mental health because it's as or maybe important than physical health. If our child gets a fever, we panic so much. We're always like, is your stomach aching? Is your head aching? Why aren't you looking well? But when the child starts behaving badly, we suddenly get our back up and we're like, oh, they're behaving badly. They're not listening to us. They're not doing this. They're not doing that. But those are all signs that we must pick up. And we must talk to our children at that point because, if you catch things early, especially mental health issues, you can prevent them from getting very complicated, very large, and very difficult to sort out. So it's a vicious cycle which goes on otherwise. So it's very important to talk about this. But if you say why aren't we talking about this, I think many of us are not talking about this because we don't know what to do. Like if you do discover that there's something wrong, you're like, now what am I going to do? So you just don't want to know about it. So you're like, oh, it's okay, it'll be fine. I think that's the attitude. Yeah,
you're right. Riddhi, you would like to add?
Yes, so beautifully put by Devmita. A simple question to everybody, and to adding to what Anjali said, if children were taught or allowed to tag what emotions and feelings are all about, the situation that has arisen right now because of the COVID would not have been there. The children initially were completely adaptive to the situation, but it is the parent side that escalated, and that's how the children started taking up. And then later on, children were not somebody who could accept it. Now, why do parents not accept? Because they were never taught about emotions, feelings, acceptance, this clearly shows it's very, very important to talk about feelings, emotions, because majority of the issues, I'm talking about mental health issues, happens when a person is unable to understand feelings and emotions. And because of that, a lot of emotional imbalance happens. And COVID scenario, this 1 year has given us a real good flavor of all this stuff. Hence, it is very, very important to talk to your child. You allow your child, you help your child to understand emotions and feelings, because that's where you can help your child to understand that if something goes wrong, you need to be adaptive, you need to be resilient, and you need to be there to sort out on your own self with support of everybody around. Yes.
True. Very well said, Riddhi. Anupriya?
So for my parents' generation and to a lot of extent for our generation, I think parenting has got stuck to the behavioral level. So what has happened is that we are only talking, parenting involves either managing the kids or indulging them or expecting from them. And we haven't been able, I think somewhere, not all the parents, but a big percentage of parents has they have not managed to go beyond that behavioral level. And that is the reason wherein we fail to talk about emotions, as Riddhi said, that we need to understand kids' emotions. We have not been able to penetrate to the next level wherein we could say that the behavior is getting impacted by emotion.
True.
And the other thing that I wanted to say was that I'm sorry, I forgot my trail of thoughts, but I'll come back to you so you can continue. So I think most importantly, we need to penetrate to the next level. Yes, I remembered now. So psychology, jab padhte hain, we read psychology, there's a very common thing. We say that physiology and psychology are interrelated. तो हम लोग फिजियोलॉजी को साइकोलॉजी से रिलेट करना भूल जाते हैं. वी से ये मन में इसके पता नहीं क्या चल रहा है बच्चे के कि ये ऐसे बिहेव कर रहा है, बट द रिवर्स कुड आल्सो बी ट्रू.
Correct.
So that's the reason that parents need to be more sensitive, as Riddhi said, and Devamita also said, that we need to understand what's going on in the child's mind. And that's very important. As a parent, for me, it feels that my biggest fear is that if my child is suffering and I don't know about it, then what kind of a parent I am? But then I am not equipped to understand that. Like Devamita said, हमें पता नहीं है क्या करना है उसके साथ.
Correct. That's a very valid point, ladies, that you shared, that we don't know exactly. We lack sufficient support structures, systems in the overall ecosystem which can help us out. And that brings me to my next question, Devamita and Riddhi, specifically to you, from your experience and interacting with parents, if you could share any incidents or anecdotes where you while interacting with parents, you found out, some issues or, some red flags which indicated, the problem could be with the mental health of children.
Yeah, so I one case really stands out for me where the parents came and they really wanted to send their son to hostel. They were like, we just want to send him to hostel. We've just brought him here because he's just become the worst kind of child. And this is a 10-year-old we're talking about. He's just become terrible. He doesn't even brush his teeth. He doesn't even get out of bed. He keeps sleeping all day. Whenever he gets up, he shouts. He refuses to study. And the minute I heard all this, I was like, this is a child in depression, and this depression, anxiety, when you go back, you would see that this is all coming from, poor academic performance. So the child is completely at the age of 10, not even able to read one sentence. So the parents have not gone back to see, that. Can you imagine the state of a child where people are reading full books and the science and maths and English and Hindi in your class, and you're not able to, you're going mad. Everyone around you is reading. Can you imagine how the child must be feeling? Why would the child even want to get up in the morning? And so we started working from there. And I mean, it was a revelation for the parents. What they thought was that our child has just gone out of control, and this is very, very common. You just think bacha haath se nikal gaya.
It reminds me of Tare Zameen Par Devmita. It reminds me of that movie.
Very much, very much. I mean, you have to understand, what is this child going through? It could also be bullying, So when the children are bullied, they just don't want to get up in the morning. And you have to go back and see, what is happening in this child's life. Why there will be no child who doesn't want to get up in the morning and do everything. Children are full of life. They want to do things. They want to explore. They're curious. They want to talk to people. They want to jump around. A child who doesn't do all that, there is something seriously wrong with that child. I mean, we have to go back and see what is wrong. So yeah, this is a case that really stands out for me. And I always tell people, don't take things at face value. This is something we must understand. So behavior comes from emotion. We must understand that, So behavior is a need. It's a need that the child is expressing, very, very simply.
Right. Riddhi?
So, Anjali, the case what I'm going to cite now is something which is kind of eye-opener for each and every parent. So 1.5 years before, a mother approached me saying that my child doesn't smile. So the child is 17-year-old. He doesn't smile, he doesn't mingle, he's a loner, he sits in the room, and a big list of complaints came to me. And Riddhi, you need to tackle this. I cannot handle this. I said, fine. And when I met the child, initially was just not opening. Probably I used a lot of dance movement, to probe, to colors and clay, and a lot of things I started doing with him. And by 17-year-old in the third sitting, Anjali, he is asking me, do you know what is life beyond death? I said, I've never experienced, So that's where we were talking about life after that, a 17-year-old. And from there, we had a lot of discussions, minimal 4 to 5 sittings. We were just talking everything and anything that happened. On the 6th day, one sentence which he spoke, and that kind of, that was a trigger for me to understand that where the child is coming from and why the parents have issues. The child says, I am such a hopeless person, ma'am. Why are you talking to me since last 5 days? And I said, okay, now I got it. Then again, started probing him. And after probing, what was the outcome? The child, while he was through second standard or third standard, he was very good in racing, running. So while he was racing, one of the races he lost. And the father said, I expected too much from you. You are just hopeless. That word hopeless was so much into him. And then every now and then the parent would say, you're such a hopeless child. Even if he would drop a plate or a spoon, he would say, such a hopeless child. And believe me, that 17-year-old had made 3 apps and has sold to a company in US. And he is already at 17 as a multimillionaire. But he considers himself as a hopeless person, right? Many times, and after working with him, now he's everything 1.5 years, everything done. In fact, he asked me to even write on him and explain parents how important it is that certain words, certain actions done by the parents might affect a child a lot. After that, when I had sitting with the parents were made to understand that how you need to tackle such children, or in fact, every child. While you speak, while you behave, your verbal and non-verbal communication matters a lot, right?
Yes.
So that is what parents have to be mindful about.
Absolutely, Riddhi, very valid point. And I most in my many conversation, it comes that, not just with children, we need such conversations. I mean, such training, such enlightenment happening to parents also. Because whatever children see at home, whatever conversations are happening at home, they are passively getting absorbing all that. Thank you, Riddhi, for that example. Anupriya, would you like to add?
I don't know. I just have my kids for experience. So with my kids, I think what I did was that taking a cue from Riddhi's story, at a very young age, I kept telling them that I am not comparing you with anybody. So when they would say, uske paas ye toy hai, uske paas ye hai, and I'm like, I am not comparing you with anybody. So you will not compare me with other parents. And at the age of 8, when it is my turn to reprimand my child, कि उसने तो ऐसा किया, तुम क्यों नहीं कर सकते हो? He comes back to me saying कि मम्मा compare नहीं करना है. You are not to compare me. So I think once you instill a thought in them, kids are very smart. Kids are really smart. So they know timelines. Kids know that we can push our limits, but there might be repercussions. And they're prepared for those repercussions. So we have to be, I think as parents, it's our responsibility कि एक बार अच्छी चीज सिखा दें, then we also follow it. We walk the talk. So for me, for my experience, I think that's what's working. So whatever I read, whatever advice I hear from sessions from Debamita and from Riddhi, I keep telling my children in the form of stories of instances from other children. So they're also stories, right?
Yes.
So I keep telling them, and they are sharp. They know how to use those things in their favor in the future. And I am saved. I've prepared my children.
True. Thank you, Anupriya. And so we were talking about COVID, right, Devmita and Riddhi. And COVID has had a huge impact on the mental health of children. I remember a few months back when the pandemic was at peak, one of my friends, she calls me and says, Anjali, you know, what did my child, 7-year-old child, tells me today? Mama, I'm feeling very lonely. I have been feeling lonely for past so many months. And, you know, think about it, mother, father, and elder brother, everybody is at home, you know, now since everybody is working from home, still the child is feeling lonely. It was very shattering for her as a mother, but these incidents and these kind of, you know, experiences are happening. So, you know, if you could, you know, share with our audience more about why is it happening and, you know, what have you been observing, especially in the past few months, based on your interaction with parents?
So children have it tough, but parents have it very tough too. You know, we've been overburdened with a lot of work. People have lost jobs. They have housework to do. They have illness to cope with, parents' illness, children's illness, and then there's the stress. You know, so parents have had it really tough. And, you know, in many ways, you know, we recede into our shells because we've been told, you know, not to exhibit our negative emotions in front of our children, you know. So we believe that we should only be the smiling parent. You know, if you're sad or worried or anything, we must not show our children. You know, must go into the bedroom, shut ourselves out, and only when we're able to smile, we should come out. So that has been a huge problem. So we've been, you know, pulling ourselves away from our children just to protect them from our negative emotions. It would have been much better, you know, if parents had really opened out, you know. So I am very open with my child, and I always tell everybody, you know, just tell them what the challenge is. You know, it sorts out so many things. Otherwise, children think that we are angry with them unless we actually tell them that, you know, what is the issue that's disturbing us. So it has nothing to do with you, you know. Another thing I think is that, you know, familiarity breeds contempt. So when you're stuck with someone, you know, 24 hours a day, you can only see the negatives after a while, you know. He's left the shoes over there. So the other day, a mom, you know, she tells me, if my daughter can just clean her room, you know, I can love her. And I'm like, yeah, you know, so we've just become like that. We can only see the negatives. And this is actually driving children away from us. So earlier, you know, we need to pack our bags and get into a bus and then, you know, go to a different city. Now we can just pick up a device and we can be in a completely different world. And that's what children are doing. And this is, you know, it's becoming a huge problem for parents because they feel that, you know, when they say put down the device, they feel that, you know, I have given the device. So when I say you put it down, you have to put it down. How can you not put it down? You know, so it becomes an ego issue. There has been a parent who called me and said, you know, we called the police home. Can you believe it? They called the police home because the child was not listening to them. So can you imagine how bad things are in people's houses? You know, it's really gone out of hand, and in many ways, it's because we are we're close to our own emotions. So like Riddhi was saying, it's about understanding emotions, and you can only understand another person's emotions if you've first understood your own. If you're trying to put a lid on your own emotions, there is no way that you can receive the other person's emotions. So I think that has been a huge challenge through COVID.
Yes. I would just like to add to it, Devmita, very valid point before we move to Riddhi and Anupriya. And this is a personal, incident which just recently happened. So one of these days, I had come back from the hospital. My mother-in-law is not well. And I was feeling very down, because of all that's been happening. And, I just wanted to put a very strong face. Like you said, we have this habit of putting a mask and showing that we are very strong. And here is my 11-year-old daughter. She says that, Mama, this is the wheel of emotions. So apparently she had, done the wheel of emotions in a creative writing class. And she tells me, Mama, this is the wheel of emotion. You tell me, which is the emotion which you are feeling today? And then we'll talk about it. And I was like, wow. But we are in a habit of, putting that strong mask, which we should.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
that's so true, Anjali and Devamita. It is very important for the parents to be themselves in front of the children. This whole issue happened with children. Initially, when the COVID struck, children were very, very adaptive to it. And parents were super enthu, in that over enthusiasm, instead of balancing the things, they went over in giving access to online the technology and making children aware of online classes hai to, you need to be aware of it. That over enthusiasm has spoiled the whole game. Okay. Yes, it was very important that, and why the parents are not at fault. What has happened is that the lady who was a homemaker was at home. The father was an earning member and he goes out. So the husband, the wife herself was not exposed to 24/7 with her husband, right? So while everybody was at home, it was kind of, you get to know the person in real. Otherwise, आप weekend पे होते हो, and weekend पे it's like you're shopping, you are going for a social visit. So you are seeing a very different person. And the person who was going out could talk to somebody, could, on his juniors and all, he could have shouted and removed his anger, there was no avenue to do that. So everybody was at home and everybody was seeing the real themselves in front of the other person, right? Now, what happened is that over-parenting has spoiled the game also. So parents are told, as Devamita rightly said, that parents are told that you need to show a very smiley face to children. Okay. So here it is very important that you talk to your children. I have been emphasizing constantly, even before COVID, that it's important to have a family time. That's a one day during a week wherein you talk about each and everything. Right? You start from appreciation, you talk about something which has not worked and how together you improve. But unlike a parent family time, what parents do is constantly instruct children. So that habit during COVID really didn't work for them, because constant nagging is not something which children appreciated, and everything went haywire. And that's where there were a lot of cases, behavioral issues, anxiety attacks, panic attacks. I remember multiple times I have taken curfew pass and I have gone to my client's place. Usually I don't go, but I was not operating from office. So I used to go to some doctor's clinic and meet my client. वो बच्चा बिल्डिंग के नीचे गिरा होता था because of being unconscious, anxiety attack, right? So yes, Devamita rightly said that many fathers lost their job, women lost their job, the ones who were, having work from home, like chote entrepreneurs, SME kind of, or, homemakers who were into some sort of business, the business was affected, right? Since they were not aware how to channelize emotions and feelings, that really didn't work for them. They were badly affected. But if you see the people who were aware of, who were journaling, who were talking to their children, who went to some sort of activity, this seriousness was not seen in those families because they were talking. It is okay to talk to your child and tell that, hey, you know what, I'm feeling very, very anxious. Okay. And today it has happened. Trust me, today only I was at a study, since morning, I was at a study session and I just got a message in the building group that my child's best friend, her mother and her sister have been detected positive. Okay. Now, first I saw this and I said, oh God, because my child, I knew that he was playing with his best friend yesterday. I called up my husband and I got to know that they were not playing yesterday. Since 2 days, they have not played together. They were just online. And I said, okay, right. But then I immediately, since I was in study session, my mentor was there and immediately said, okay, release it. Okay. But when I picked up the phone and I spoke to my child, my first, response, because I was relaxed, my first response was that, hey, you know what? For 2-3 days, we are not going to go down and play. Right. But if I would not have, worked on myself or listened to my mentor, I would have reacted and I would have been panicked, and that would have escalated to my child. This has been the scenario throughout the year. And believe me, we thought that the lockdown has opened up, so there would be less cases. But since January, it is all double and triple cases that we are receiving. And I'm sure Debamita would agree to me, it is increasing day by day. Because now what is added is that loneliness, one-way communication, everything, because of the overexposure to technology and the screen and no other activity, that other factors are also adding to the list.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's very messy. Now we have to start working from the grassroots level, it seems.
Yeah.
That's right, Priti. Anupriya, would you like to add anything you observed?
I have 2 stories. Yes, I have 2 instances to share. So when the lockdown started, as Debamita and Riddhi both have put down, nobody knew what to do with looking at each other's faces 24/7. I had no clue.
Yeah, I think Anupriya's, there's some network issue. Yeah, let Anupriya
Hello.
join. Yeah, Anupriya,
Yes.
can you hear us?
Yes. Am I audible now?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Yes. So, like I was telling that I had a couple of meltdowns with my elder son who was 7 years old then. And I then sat down one day and I realized that we don't know when this is going to end. It's not a temporary situation. And I had to sit down with him and tell him there will be days when I will be upset, because even I am not used to, with everybody being at home, I'm not used to this situation and I'm as distraught as you are. And let's partner. So there will be days when I will be upset. You can fight with me. I give you that right, Let's fight some days and let's go some days. And I might be upset. You can get upset. Still, I had a couple of meltdowns still, but they were much more amicable because, as Debamita said, that we overparent and we want our kids only to see our perfect sides. So I think this lockdown period has been that opportunity wherein I could be more human more real with my kids. And they know Mama can get upset, but she still loves us. She has our best interests in her mind. That's one instance that is most important. And the other instance, kids have actually been more adaptable and more persevere in all this situation. I was in Kolkata. I live in Kolkata, and we had a lockdown, and then we have a cyclone Amphan. And for 5 days, we did not have electricity.
Oh, yeah.
We did not have electricity in our house. Everybody was cribbing except for the kids. And that was the time when I made sure that whoever I was talking to, I told them in front of the kids that these kids are the reason why we are holding up.
Absolutely.
And it just created such a positive, and I know the implication will be these kids will develop that self-image of themselves that they can hold up. And these are small instances when you do some things right and you feel proud of them, and then you recount them in a panel like this. But yes, I am also learning. I still have meltdowns with my kids, but I then get back to them and tell them I was upset. And it doesn't mean anything in the long run. Me being upset with you doesn't mean anything in the long run. The only thing is, I expect you to do this. Can you give this to me? Yes. Okay. Taken. No. Let's work on it. How, I don't know yet. But yes, the intention is to work on it. How, I have to seek help.
Absolutely, Anupriya. Parenting is a journey where you have to reflect every time and think what you did
Absolutely.
good, keep getting better at it. And you rightly said, children have shown a lot of resilience, and they
Yes.
have been the light which has kept us moving through all this time. And definitely,
Absolutely.
we need to, emotions, understanding emotions and learning about them. That's very important. Now, moving to the second part of the conversation, like when we say these conversations and awareness can empower children. So I would like to know from all of you that what do you, if you can decode empowerment for, children, what kind of behavior patterns we are saying that, empowerment in children means.
So, should I go?
Yeah, Divya. Sure, sure.
Okay. So empowerment, I think, in many ways, there's real empowerment and then there's fake empowerment. Okay. So one of the ways I really, I always discourage people from fake empowerment, that's patronizing behavior. You have to drink milk. Do you want the red cup or the blue cup? That's not empowerment. Okay. That's not even a choice. Empowerment is the power to say no. Okay. So one of the important things, I think, as far as mental health and empowerment go, the first thing I think is allowing children to feel what they feel. So when a child is crying, you say, oh, there's nothing to cry about. Oh, there's nothing to be afraid of. Oh, what are you getting so angry about? Oh, what is there to be so upset about? So you're always, invalidating what they're feeling. So at a point, you feel that, oh, all my emotions are wrong. There's something seriously wrong with me. Only I feel like this. But all of us feel like that. So for allowing children to feel what they feel, I think, is step one. Telling children that you can change you cannot change the situation, you can change your attitude to the situation, is step two. That is what resilience is, and that is what Anupriya beautifully brought out, that children don't want the outside situation to change. So whenever anything happens, I'm going to fight with the teacher, I'm going to fight with that child, what is that mother doing, how could she allow this? So they don't want us to go and fight over there. What we need to tell them is, okay, that has happened, those people are doing that, we don't want to change them, or we don't want to alter that. We just need to think about it differently. Why did they do this? What were they thinking? Do they really mean to shout at us? So there was a child who refused to go to school. This is pre-pandemic, because the attendant of the bus used to shout at her every day. So it came to a point where the child would vomit in the morning as soon as she saw the bus, because the attendant used to shout at her. And the parents reached out to me and I said, why don't you explain to her that the attendant has nothing personal against her? It's her job to keep everybody safe. Probably she doesn't have very good communication skills, and so she yells and tells the children to sit, but eventually it's for your own safety. The minute the child heard that, she was transformed. She just stopped feeling afraid. So I think these are the things which are really empowering. The other thing, of course, is to share your own challenges with which we said, we don't, we're like, oh, we're the gods over here, we don't have any challenges and we're always cool and we can manage everything. So I am one for always, I wake up in the morning and I start telling my daughter, so this is my challenge, that is my challenge, and tuck, the solutions come. I can't even tell you how I'm bombarded with solutions, and they're all good solutions. Okay, always pick at least one of them for my
I
day.
can vouch for that. Devmita, I can vouch for that. And I just add a little here because I read her story that she had sent to us, and it was one of those where she helped you. So I can.
Yeah. So that same story. So when the pandemic started, I was like, my God, now what's gonna happen? Because everything was out of the house, and suddenly to move everything indoors and to do everything, and she was like, what is that? I will make the poster for your workshop. You arrange this workshop. I will help you formulate it. I know how to do this. And I was like, wow, this is a 13-year-old I'm talking to. She knows how to do everything. So they have a lot of solutions if we just allow them. And they're not afraid to fail as long as we are ready to support them. So I think these are very important things. This is what empowerment is all about, allowing them to feel, telling them that, all we can do is change ourselves, we cannot change the situation, and then helping them to, solve, overcome challenges, so that builds self-esteem. So I think that's what real empowerment would be.
So beautifully put. Let me add a little to the list. So empowerment, as per me, is something wherein you instill, the first is you instill emotional intelligence in a child. You create an emotional intelligent child, make them understand what emotions are, theirs and others both. Second, very important, is that you allow a very non-judgmental space to your child to speak. And simultaneously, it's important for you as a parent to give that non-judgmental listening ear as well. Because if you are going to listen to your child with your thought process, your exposure, and what you feel, it's not going to solve the purpose. Third important thing is that whenever a child is upset, or you see that the child is not able to cope up with some emotion, feeling, situation, person, whatever it can be, instead of probing the child, you can just hug your child, touch your child, take hands in hands, or just sit beside and say, hey, I understand you're a little upset. Do you want to talk? If the child doesn't want to talk, you need to respect that. What we do is we tend to probe so much that the child gets more into it. We reinforce the situation, and we say, hey, okay, it's okay. Since you want my attention, you can behave like this. That's what example we are setting for the child for the next time. So third important thing is that allow your child to be himself or herself. Fourth, very important, if you want to ever empower your child, is let the child get bored. अगर हम अपने बच्चे को 10 मिनट भी कुछ नहीं करते हुए देखते हैं, विजय ऐसे क्यों बैठा है? Such an idle, lazy child you are here. But let the child be like that. It's important, because boredom is the mother of invention and creativity, which we need to allow the child to explore. If we are going to give A to Z to the children, they will never go creative, they will never go innovative. And then we say that, oh, my child is keeping me so busy. But obviously, we have not taught them to be creative, right? And the fifth and most important, the fifth one is create leaders. That's how you're empowering children. Don't give them solutions to each and every problem. Don't be there if your child is just fighting with somebody and coming and complaining. Let the child handle this. When you feel that the damage can be major, intervene. Till then, let the child manage. You need to empower your child to understand what are the responsibilities associated and how to handle the situation. But don't jump into it and start doing it for your child. I hope this helps parents. 5 important things to add to what Debamita said, empowering your child.
Thank you, Riddhi. Definitely very, very useful pointers. As a parent also, I've seen my children going through all these ups and downs, and I think great pointers. Anupriya?
Okay, so first of all, I have to say I was doing a self-assessment from whatever Devmita and Riddhi were saying. And I'm giving myself a pat because I seem to be doing certain things right.
Wow.
So yes, free time, free play, acknowledging the emotion and stuff like that. Yes, I'm doing certain things right. Not everything, but certain things for sure. But I am a normal mother. I am no psychologist. But I am a storyteller and I'm a writer. I am somebody who's active on the social media. So from whatever I derive from there is that there are so many mother communities, and the motive is to share our life experiences so that they become stories, and we can relate to those stories and derive our own solutions. So if that model will work for me, it will definitely work for the child also.
True.
So I figured that taking stories as the foundation of conversations could be a good way to empower children, to force them to think. Not force is not the right word, but yes, to enable them to think. You enable them to understand in what situation the protagonist in the story is. if they're able to relate to it, or if they are able to, they can keep it in their memory, in their repository, and recall it later. So anything, any of the two things, either relate to it or recall it, and then strengthen their own relationship with themselves. So yes, these are my 3 R's as a content curator, that there is a relatability quotient of stories, there is a recall value in stories, and then there is that strengthens their relationship with themselves, because it helps them introspect, and it helps them solve, it empowers them, basically it empowers them. So that's my take, that stories have a strong role to play.
Absolutely, Anupriya. And I think not just that, it gives, a path for the parent and the child to connect. Sometimes when I find it difficult to approach my child, initiating a conversation, oh, hey, let's pick up this book, read it together, and then the discussion just flows. So, yes. Yeah. So I see Anupama is already here.
So I must say that this has been a very, very enriching conversation for me, because I was listening to everything and making notes that what I need to do better as a parent and even as a mentor, because I think when you interact with children, you have a responsibility, not just as a parent, but even say as a teacher, mentor, or if you're somebody's guardian, uncles and aunts. So thank you so much, Anjali, for the excellent moderation. Thank you, Debmita, Riddhi, and Anupriya, for your valuable insights. And I truly mean it that this has been a very useful conversation with such practical tips, with such relatable thoughts. I think, and as I see from the comments which we've been displaying, all the people who are watching, they're really loving whatever you're saying. So it was fabulous. There are a few questions, so we've just opened it now for Q&A. So everybody else who's watching, if you have any questions for Anjali, Debmita, Anupriya, or Riddhi, please post, and as time permits, we will take the questions. So the first question was from Rohini. Her question is that my daughter expects the same liberty in all the matters. So sometimes, basically what she says is that sometimes she gives her freedom, but in certain matters, she puts certain restrictions. So Rohini says that her daughter feels confused and then expects the same freedom always. So what should she be doing? And her daughter is 13 years old. So maybe Debmita and Riddhi, you being experts, probably you can take this one.
Sure. So, Rohini, hi, that was a lovely question. What you can do is just take your child out for a coffee one day and just talk it out. It is much better than giving any sort of advices. Just talk it out, explain that, I put restrictions or I allow you. It's all about the situation or the, that particular moment, what you come up with the proposal and all. If I feel that that is good for you, that is benefit for you, or you will not end up in any problem, is where I allow you. But if I, as a parent, somebody who is more elder to you, somebody who is more experienced, if I feel, I restrict. But if you feel that my restriction also cannot is you need to discuss about my restriction, feel free. We as a parent child can always talk it out. You can explain your perspective and I can always explain my perspective, and then we can decide mutually. Giving this platform to mutually decide works wonders, not only for a 13-year-old but also for a 19-year-old. So better, sooner the better you start with this, you'll end up creating a very bonding and very beautiful kind of space between you and your child, and that really works.
Absolutely. Would you like to add to that, Debmita?
So I completely agree with what Riddhi said. So it should be democratic. Every decision should be democratic. The child should have the right to put their point forth. We should not think, oh, they're talking back to me and what is this and stuff like that. The other thing I think here, which parents should really convey is that this is about you. It's not about me.
Right.
So you go and you do something. It's not ki, meri izzat chali jayegi. A lot of parents, they don't want their children to do certain things because they feel that it will affect their image in society.
Yes.
So I think it's very important to let children know that this is not about me. It's not
Yes.
going to affect me. In the long run, this is about you. So make decisions that are good for you. I will help you to make those decisions because I have been through this phase. We've all been teenagers. We've all been 13. We've been through the same dilemmas. So we can help you make the decisions. We can talk to someone else who may be able to give you some good suggestions. We can read some books about it. But ultimately, it's about you and not about me. So I think it's important to repeat that over and over again as well.
Yes, yes, I completely agree. And that's really excellent advice. So I hope that answers your question, Rohini. The next question is something we actually did touch upon during the discussion, but maybe we can talk about it a little more right now. So how far it is to hide our emotions from children? They should also know the taste of different emotions that we go through. And, when we can't always appear to be smiling parents, as we did discuss, because then when we become angry or sad, they cannot really take it. So I think that's a very valid question. And I want to know Anupriya and Anjali's thoughts on this, because as parents, I know sometimes there is this tendency that we tend to, hide these aspects about our emotions. And so what have you experienced? Do you find yourself struggling with this, or have you been able to deal with it? If you both could just share that. Anupriya, maybe you can go first.
So I and my husband have a lot of arguments in front of our kids. In fact, the entire family. We live in a joint family, and it's
Right.
always not possible to bottle up your views. And I always tell my kids that, you can have a difference of opinion. You can be upset over something, but there is something called apne haath apne paas rakhoge.
Yeah.
So it's like certain things are not acceptable, like moving out your hands or hitting somebody because they have a lot of siblings in the house, or using a hurtful language. So at their age, they don't really understand hurtful language, but they do understand there are bad words and these are not to be used at any cost. And because we are not using those bad words while we are arguing, they actually look at argument as a way of expressing ourselves. And then we make sure that we patch up in front of them. So the patching up doesn't happen separately, bachon ke bagair, be it me and my mother-in-law, or be it me and my husband. We do it in front of the kids. Okay, fine, we talk it out, we make sure. So I model that conversation sometimes so that, acha, we fought. Okay, I'm sorry, I think I was a little loud. And this is a conscious modeling of a conversation wherein kids understand that there can be arguments, but that is not the end of it all. That should not affect the relationship in the long term. And there are certain lines that cannot be crossed in an argument. That's what I've been trying to do.
Right. Anjali, I know you did talk about how your daughter came with that emotions wheel for you, what she learned during her class. So do you feel that after that it has made you more comfortable sharing your emotions with her, like say when you're low, and how does it help in your bonding?
Yeah, so I'm learning, Anupama. It's like age-old conditioning since childhood that, I'm a strong girl, strong woman. I can face anything. And if I share or, if I melt down, it's some sort of a weakness. But yes, I'm learning, Anupama. And, I've realized that the more I'm vulnerable, honest about my emotions with my children, it's empowering for them. It helps me, of course, because I have somebody who is receiving it, listening it, but it is empowering for them. And I believe that our children are more resilient and they have all the capabilities to take, which we feel they are not. But I think this is an important part of their growing up. And I would really advise, suggest, request all the parents to, have this always in mind that yes, we are strong, but we are weak. There are moments. So, share your vulnerabilities with your children, and they are strong, more stronger than you think.
True. I cannot agree more, because I've always been that kind of a parent. It just comes naturally to me. So my daughter has seen my vulnerabilities. She's seen me even scream and then realize that, oh God, I'm sorry I did that today. And she kind of just discusses it with me that, okay, Mama, yeah, today what you did wasn't right. It's okay. Maybe you forgot to do your counting from 1 to 10 and all. And she's just 6 years old and she does understand that. So I completely agree. But before I move to the next question, Riddhi and Devmita, Debamita, I just wanted a quick comment from you both on one question which somebody had asked me. The person was a parent of a child who attends BTB classes. And the question was that when do we draw a line between showing the struggles and vulnerabilities? Is there really a need to draw a line? Because you never know, sometimes it can become, like overdoing of it. Because, like say, for example, a person is going through some kind of major turmoil in life. And how much, is it necessary to keep some of it protected? Because I think you being professionals can give a better insight on how is it something can be too much, or it's just that we need to follow our instincts. So Debamita, maybe you can share yours and then I'll come to Ritu.
So I think number one is being age appropriate. So first of all, to share is very important. The reason is very important. So as soon as the child knows the reason, they're like, it's not me.
That's
the first thing they want to know. It's not me. I'm not making you sad, and it's not because of me that you're not happy. So that's more than enough for the child. After that, whatever it says, okay, it's your problem. I'm listening to you. I'll give you a solution. So yes, but there are certain problems, like say, maybe abuse, which you cannot share in front of the child. Yes. So it always has to be appropriate, age appropriate sharing. And the point is, when a child lives in the house with you, they often know much more than what you think they know. So it's a good idea to actually share as much as you can without going into maybe the gory technical details. But age appropriate sharing is very important, but we should not use them as an emotional crutch.
True, very valid point.
Very valid. That is dangerous because they don't have the emotional strength to carry us, So we can't, so we have to be strong people, and we have to say that, okay, we have this problem, we're looking for the solution. Till there, the conversation is okay. But when you just collapse on them over and over again, that, I'm feeling so scared, I can't manage. And many times we do that, so it's a conscious decision between sharing and non-sharing. So that's where, we need to draw the line that, we are not overwhelmed with our problem. We are looking for a solution. You can help me with finding the solution. What children need to know is that we are not overwhelmed with the problem. That overwhelmed, of course, we do feel overwhelmed. That has to be shared with someone else, not with the child.
Right. Would you like to add to that, Udhi?
Yes. So here I would like to share an example. Recently, I did a 1.5 month activity with around 132 parents, wherein every week, twice, I used to put an activity and they need to implement. Now, this whole happened because I wanted to support them in explaining what mental health is all about, mental wellness for them and mental wellness for their children. One of the activity was talk to your child about what is being bullied and what is bully. Okay. And I explained that it has to be age appropriate. I'm adding to what Debamita said. Age appropriate is why it is important, because one of the parents who did miss out listening to my voice note explained a 4-year-old that, what? I was very skinny. I was very petted and everybody was bullying me. And I really didn't like. Anytime if this happens to you, you come and talk to me. Okay. And so the child asked, what is bully? 4-year-old. She said, they were trying to pull my hair, pull my uniform. Okay. Now this is not age appropriate. To a 4-year-old, explaining bully is not exactly the way what you have suffered in your life. Probably you can say that when somebody makes a little fun of you or says that, hey, tune ye nahi kiya, wo nahi kiya. If some words or sentences are spoken, come and tell me. I will explain you what exactly this is and how you need to handle. At 4, you need not even use the word bully because it is beyond them to understand. And when you over-educate the child, they get into a state of confusion. That's where 12-15 saal ko inko psychologist ki zarurat padti hai, because there's a lot of confusion in their mind. Right? Age appropriate is very, very important. Never over-educate, never under-educate. It has to be as simple as you can make it.
Right. That's a very...
With your permission, Anupama, with your permission, hello. Yes, with your permission, I want to share a very recent example
please
with
do.
my kids. So mine
Yes.
is all practical knowledge.
Of course.
So I have 3 kids in the house, 2 of my own and one niece.
Yes. Right.
And my younger son is very young right now, so he seems to be more sensitive. And my older one, because he's growing up, 8 years old, he's understood the concept of having fun, making fun. Uh, there was a day when he and the other cousin were making fun of my younger one.
Right.
So I just took him aside and I had to tell him that when you do something that the other person is not liking, it's
Right.
troubling them, it's disturbing them, it's bullying, and bullying is not an appropriate act. And that's how I introduced the concept of bullying to my 8-year-old. So yes,
Right,
when they
right.
grow up, they will understand that body shaming is bullying, inappropriate touching is bullying, inappropriate comments are bullying. So those specifics will come later. But for now,
Yeah.
anything that upsets the other person is not something that we want to do all the time.
Yeah,
To
absolutely.
make fun of them, that's bullying. For now, that's his
Absolutely.
definition of bullying.
Excellent,
Wonderful.
excellent. I think that, and that's why it's important to have these practical examples, because parents then relate better in terms of, you know, what we can really do when we introduce these concepts. And so we have time for just one more question, unfortunately. So otherwise, this being such an enlightening session that I would have loved to go on and on. So Soumya asked about another very important aspect, that when we see children sad, there is a tendency to cheer them up immediately. Like, you know, bas kaise bhi unko khush kar dena immediately, right? And I'm guilty of it too. It's not that I've not made this mistake as a parent. So what is your take on this? Like, if we see our children sad, how can we rightly handle that situation? And maybe this, all 4 of you can talk about either from your experience or your expertise. So I'll start with you, Anjali, this time.
Yeah, so one of the things, Anu, that I do is that I tell my children often that whatever you are feeling, acknowledge it. You know, whether it's sadness, whether it's anger, you know, it is okay. It is
Right.
okay to go through it. But, you know, like with the simple things, we say, okay, whenever you're feeling angry, just do 1, 2, 3. And you know, you'll go past that particular emotion, the strength, the you know, intensity it is coming to you with, it'll calm down, and then you will be able to think more logically.
Right.
So that's one of the things I do with both of them.
Lovely, lovely. Yes, Devmita, what do you think that we can do as parents when we see our children sad, instead of just forcing them to smile or laugh immediately?
Yeah, so forcing children to smile and laugh, you know, it's for us. It's a very selfish kind of thing, and it must definitely be avoided. so we must give them permission to be sad. So there will be days, you cannot be happy all the time, 24 hours a day, 365 days in the year. It's highly impossible. Allow them to feel sad, allow them to, you know, say what is making them sad. So I think on days when they are sad, we get into this, no, come, let's go have an ice cream, come, let's go have, you know, let's go play a game, you know, whatever, at whatever cost. We get into we start vibrating at a higher frequency in order to bring them up to our frequency and make them happy. But that's not right. In fact, we should lower our frequency at this point when we see children sad, and just sit. Put away your phone, switch off the laptop, maybe not cook too much, just sit. And then the child will come and just sit next to you, maybe not tell you what's happening, but slowly come near you, absorb your aura, your vibe, the calming vibe, and then feel the strength to share a little bit with you, whatever it is, you know. So often when I, working, I work in a school, I run an emergency clinic in a school. So a lot of times, I have children who are not injured, who walk in, and I know that they're not injured. I mean, you can make out they're neither sick nor injured. In one look, I know that. But I don't chase them away, because I can sense from their body language that they just want to be near a compassionate adult. So I just allow them to come in. I'll be like, okay, sit. And I keep saying patients, more patients. I continue with my OPD. If they want to hang out a little more, then I'll say, okay, cut bandages, or write the register, stuff like that. And slowly, they will feel good, and they'll say, okay, ma'am, now we'll go. so we need to give them our calming presence, our attention without giving them too much attention. So it's like, tell me what happened, why are you sad, nobody's going to tell you like that. But when you calm down, when you allow them to come into your space, slowly they may or may not share, but they will feel better. So yes, I think that's the only way to tackle sadness for anybody at any age.
Great. Yes, absolutely. Riddhi?
So beautifully put up by Anjali and Devamita. So yes, I too agree with that. Never probe when your child is facing or experiencing any sort of emotion, not only sadness, even anger, even happiness. Don't probe the child. Instead, you can just tell your child, be with the child, hug, touch, or just sit doing nothing. Just nothing. Sometimes even silence works wonders.
Right.
Okay. So just sit beside the child, or probably if your child is teenager or a young adult, you can just prepare a cup of tea or coffee, give him a coffee and just sit beside him. You won't believe that works wonders. That's so magical, rather than probing and constantly asking questions. Because as I mentioned before also, if you probe much, it is kind of reinforcing that situation, and you push your child more in that emotion and feeling, So instead of probing, you need to help your child to come out of it. Do everything that will help your child to just, understand and come out of it. Or probably after 10-15 minutes, if you sit with your child, if you hugged, you've touched, or just doing nothing, then you say, let's go out for a drive. Not with too much of enthusiasm, but in a very normal, as you are, similar in that similar situation, what your voice tone and your, your body language demands, behave accordingly. But don't be so excited, because that makes up, that looks as if it is faked. So nothing faked works for a longer time.
Right. Very well said. Yes, Anu?
So I have very young kids, so they don't feel sad, they feel upset. Right. And they cry. So I am guilty of distracting them, because they're too young to understand any kind of logic. So I distract them sometimes, and sometimes I just let them cry. I sit beside them and I let them cry, because I am myself exhausted.
Right.
And I don't know what logic to give to a 5-year-old. And I let them cry, and after a point, because there is also another risk that every time the child cries and you try to make things right for them, I am scared that they might develop that attention-seeking attitude. So I sense that risk. And that's the reason when वो कहते हैं ना पानी सर से ऊपर चढ़ गया है, जब कुछ और काम नहीं कर रहा है, I let them cry and I tell them, you can sit and cry here. I'm in the next room. Yes. And once you are okay, you can come to me, we will play.
Right.
I give them that carrot, but I tell them that we can play then. But if you feel like crying, you can cry, sit here and cry. It works sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. Then I have to do something just to become a joker to make them laugh.
Yeah, true. Yes. I relate to that, becoming a joker completely with my 6-year-old. Yeah. So that was a fabulous and such an enriching discussion. I am so happy that we have had this kind of discussion at this event. When I had planned this event, I knew, of course, that there will be a lot of learning, but I must say that it has truly gone beyond what I had expected with these wonderful talks and discussions. Thank you so much, all you 4 ladies, for gracing this event. I'm truly honored that you chose to agree to be a part of this. Thanks once again.
Pleasure.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye. And all the best with your venture.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Anupama.
Bye, everybody.